Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Introduction to the Tourism Growth Program with FedDev Ontario. My name is Christopher Shackleton, and I'm the Digital Transformation Projects Coordinator here at the Ontario Museum Association. I'm a male in his late 20s with brown hair, and I'm joining you today from the OMA's offices with our virtual blue background behind me. As an organization of provincial scope, the Ontario Museum Association recognizes that its members and community live and work on the lands and territories of Indigenous peoples. We are thankful to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to all communities across the province. We acknowledge that there are more than 40 treaties and other land agreements that cover Ontario, and the descendants and cultures of the first peoples who lived here are a vibrant and integral part of our society today. We gratefully acknowledge and deeply value the opportunity we have to learn from and cherish the contributions of Indigenous peoples of the past, present, and into the future. As we acknowledge the colonial legacy of museums, we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. As you participate in this gathering, we invite you to reflect on the land that you are on, who the traditional keepers of the land are, what the treaty relationship is, or if it is unceded territory. Toronto, where the OMA offices are located, is the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. This territory is part of the Dish with One Wampum Agreement and is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. I want to make sure everybody knows how to participate today in our webinar. You should be able to see the slides and see and hear our speakers. If you'd like to ask a question of our speakers, please use the Q&A feature that you will find at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like to say hello to the colleagues on the call, you can chat with them using the chat feature, which you can also access at the bottom of your screen. Also at the bottom of your screen, you will find a button, the CC icon, to access our automated closed captions. Our OMA staff will be monitoring the chat. It can help with any technical questions that you may have. I have the distinct honor of welcoming to our webinar today the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, also known as FedDev Ontario, which delivers programs and services to support innovation and economic growth in Southern Ontario, Canada's most populous region. The agency has invested over $4.1 billion in more than 6,000 projects, developed partnerships with more than 45,000 organizations, and leveraged additional investments of more than $6 billion to support businesses, organizations, and communities. They work closely with partners, stakeholders, investors, and communities to improve local economic conditions and create new opportunities. I'm going to stop my screen share and then bring up our two colleagues. So we're joined today by Jordan Grenswich, who is the director responsible for the Tourism Growth Program at FedDev Ontario. He's the acting director of Community and Economic Development. He's been with the agency since 2011 in multiple roles and has taken on the director role there to oversee this new program. Jordan lives in Windsor and works out of FedDev Ontario's headquarters there. We're also joined by Alison Barclay, who's the acting manager of Tourism and Community Recovery. She's been with FedDev since 2015, previously worked on the Tourism Relief Fund, and she lives in Kitchener. So good morning, Jordan and Alison. I'll let you take it away, and we're so excited to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, good morning, Christopher. I hope you can hear me. I hope everything is sounding good here on your end. Perfect. Okay, good. No, thank you very much for that very warm welcome. I should correct, and I hope I didn't send this to you by mistake. I'm in Waterloo, so FedDev Ontario is headquartered in Waterloo. So just that clarification. I grew up in Kitchener, Waterloo area here, so we are headquartered in Waterloo. So I just wanted to mention that so there wasn't any confusion on where FedDev Ontario didn't just pick up and move down to Windsor. So in case anybody was wondering, but yes, good morning. Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody on the call. Bonjour tout le monde. Je vous remercie d'être venu aujourd'hui avec nous. So thank you for joining us today. I'm just, as Christopher said, my name is Jordan Grenswich. I'm the director responsible here at FedDev Ontario for the Tourism Growth Program. Very pleased to be joining you here today. I'm joined here by my colleague, Alison Barclay, as Christopher mentioned, and together we are here to give an overview and answer some questions that anybody may have on the Tourism Growth Program. Alison is the manager of the program, and I'm the director, and together we've really undertaken a deep dive into the program and have helped get the program off the ground here since its launched back in November. So really pleased to be joining everybody today. I'm just going to share my screen here and we can get started. Hope everybody can see that.
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. All right. So before we begin, as Christopher did, I would just like to recognize that I am joining you all today from Waterloo, Ontario, which is located on the lands traditionally occupied by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and neutral peoples. So I think it is certainly important to make that land acknowledgement as part of these discussions, and very pleased to be able to do that. So thank you everybody for registering today and taking time out of your schedule to join us here. A big thank you as well to Christopher, to Jen, and to the Ontario Museum Association for organizing this session. Really happy to be able to share this information and really spread the news about the tourism growth program, and hopefully have it resound with various stakeholders out in and across Southern Ontario. So this session is tailored specifically for applicants and potential applicants to the tourism growth program in Southern Ontario. So we'll be going over that today in great detail. Just before we get started, just a couple of short housekeeping notes. So while I will be delivering the session in English, you are more than welcome to ask any questions in the Q&A module in the official language of your choice here today. So I'm happy to respond in either language. And all of the information on the slides that I'll be presenting today is available on our website, and more so, in fact. So it's okay if you're not taking notes on the slides, because this information is included in greater detail, I would say, on our website with multiple steps in terms to help guide through the application process. So just in terms of goals set out for today, we are here to provide an overview of FedDev Ontario and our role within Southern Ontario, and our role as an economic development agency. We're going to review the Tourism Growth Program, or TGP as we call it. So go over the parameters in terms of eligibility, potential activities, how funding works, those kinds of things. And then also go over in a bit of detail the process for submitting an application. So Allison and I are here to answer questions, really about any details you may have questions about regarding the program. We can go over the application process, and I will encourage, questions that you may have. I would encourage you to just hold off till later in the presentation, because we will be going over a fair number of details around the program. So hopefully a lot of your questions will be answered as I go through the slides here. But as I said, happy to answer any follow-up questions that there may be. And afterwards, we will include contact information and coordinates for how to reach out and get more information should you need any. So FedDev Ontario is one of 7 regional development agencies across Canada. So collectively, we offer regional and national programming. And we operate as place-based economic development organizations, and we tailor our assistance to the needs of the region that we serve. So there are 7 RDAs, as we call ourselves, across Canada, serving all the various parts of Ontario, including 2 specifically in Ontario. So FedDev Ontario was created in 2009, and Christopher went over a number of the different statistics in terms of support that we've been able to deliver to date, and partnerships we've organized. So over $3.5 billion invested since 2009, partnerships with over 22,000 organizations. So significant work delivering programs along the same lines as these, in terms of very specific tailored programs to needs, as well as more broadly based growth oriented programming, working with businesses, working with not-for-profit organizations. So a vast amount of experience accrued over these last 15 years or so. So we work in Canada's most populous region, which is a key contributor to the overall Canadian economy. As I mentioned, we are headquartered in Waterloo, and we also have offices in Toronto, Peterborough, and Ottawa. So when we think of the tourism economy in Canada, we often think of the industry right here in Southern Ontario. The sector is a major employer in our region with a substantial economic reach across more than 200,000 businesses, most of whom are small and medium-sized enterprises, but there are obviously not-for-profit organizations such as museums that are integral to the sector as well. If we look at the roles that FedDev Ontario plays, as you see here, we do not just define ourselves in terms of our investments and our partnerships in terms of delivering funding. So we do see ourselves in a number of different roles. Specifically, we do act as a champion by promoting Southern Ontario's assets to raise the profile of the region nationally and advocate for the region's interests within government. We also are a co-investor, as you see here, and that is what we're here to discuss today. Partnering with organizations, businesses to invest in strategic projects that will assist in not only in leveraging the skills within an organization, helping it to grow, but to contribute to the broader economy as well. We act as a convener as well by bringing together key stakeholders to build collaborations and explore solutions to build a more resilient economy in Southern Ontario. We also, in that role, act as a collaborator to really help our stakeholders reach their potential and help to identify opportunities, work strategically with organizations to find solutions or to create pathways for future success. And that goes to our Pathfinder role as well, where we help businesses and organizations find the best way to support their needs, and we work closely with other federal, provincial, and regional economic development partners to help find that best path for different organizations. So on the slide here, in terms of FedDev Ontario specifically, you'll see here, this is our catchment area. So we've got a map of Southern Ontario. So if you see all of these what we call census divisions across Southern Ontario, this is our catchment area here. So really starting in the west on the shores of Georgian Bay, moving east and then up over Haliburton. So essentially just under the Muskokas area, and then all the way over to the Quebec border, wrapping up around Renfrew. Everything within that and below, all the way down to Chatham-Kent and Essex down here, just in the southwest. That is the catchment area for FedDev Ontario. So if you are joining us from an area outside of this, in Northern Ontario, perhaps, that is covered by our sister agency, which is called FedNor, and they are responsible for administering the tourism growth program in that region. So I would encourage you to reach out to them if you are not located in this area and are still interested in the program. So getting to the specific reason that we are here today. So on November 20th of 2023, FedDev Ontario opened the first intake for the Tourism Growth Program in Southern Ontario, which is part of the larger $108 million national program that is being delivered by all of the regional development agencies. So the program was first announced in budget 2023, and it is a signature part of the federal tourism growth strategy, which is committed to investing in the growth of Canada's tourism industry. So here at FedDev Ontario, we have $30 million in funding in total under the Tourism Growth Program to provide support for Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, small and medium-sized businesses, and not-for-profit organizations in Southern Ontario as they develop local tourism products and experiences that position the region as an all-seasons destination of choice. So it's all about growth, this program, growing businesses, growing the industry, and contributing to taking that next step to broaden and attract tourists from all across Canada and internationally. So as part of the delivery, we do recognize that Indigenous tourism is vital to the economic development and growth of Canada's tourism industry from coast to coast to coast. So as a priority under the Tourism Growth Program, approximately 15% of the total investment by all RDAs will support Indigenous-led tourism initiatives. So we share that target along with our other regional development agency colleagues, and we will be striving to have a minimum of 15% of programming and funding going towards Indigenous tourism. So to close out just the overview, this current intake is open until February 29th, 2024. So applications can be submitted anytime up until, I believe it's 8:59 p.m. The evening of February 29th. But I would encourage everybody on the call, those interested in applying, you do not need to wait. I'll be going over this a few different times as part of the meeting, but encourage you to get your applications in. The earlier the better, for whatever, for a variety of reasons, whether it be technical challenges that may happen on that last day. You don't want to use your leap year day to fill out an application for funding. A multitude of reasons, but I encourage you, if you've got an idea and you've got the ability to submit and are interested, please feel free to submit earlier than the 29th, so you can actually enjoy your leap year day. So let's look at eligibility under the program. So the key for this program is an eligible applicant must be focused on the tourism industry or catering to tourists and tourism businesses to be eligible. So you'll see here, the eligibility is really pretty straightforward. Incorporated small and medium-sized enterprises operating in the tourism industry are eligible. We have Indigenous-owned businesses, including Indigenous sole proprietors or Indigenous tourism organizations, also eligible. Not-for-profit organizations, including tourism associations and economic development organizations. And then we have governments, so that would include municipal, provincial, territorial, and their related entities. So those encompass the entities that are eligible under the program. In terms of ineligible applicants, businesses or organizations who are not primarily focused on the tourism industry or whose services are not primarily for public use or benefit are not normally eligible applicants under TGP. So this includes those in the following industries. So you'll see restaurants, food services, hotel chains, retail sector, and private leisure facilities and event venues. Now, the most common questions that we have heard is around the funding terms. So, how does funding work? What are the expectations? What are the conditions? Those kinds of things. So before we get into some of the details on what will be funded in terms of activities, so we'll talk about how it works. So you'll see here, the overview of TGP is that contributions will be limited to $250,000 per project normally. So that is the ceiling that's been identified for TGP in terms of what the agency will support. Doesn't mean the project can't be larger than that, certainly, but the amount of funding that FedDev Ontario will contribute will be capped at $250,000 normally. In terms of business support to businesses, businesses are eligible to receive interest-free repayable contributions for up to 50% of eligible costs if they are successful with their project proposal. Eligible not-for-profit organizations and indigenous entities are able to receive non-repayable contributions for 50% or all the way up to 100%, depending on the assessment of the project and the broad-based benefits that it projects. So there is an opportunity for non-repayable here for between 50 and 100%, depending on the project proposal. In terms of proposed activities, so the eligibility date for activities under this program is March 29th, 2023. So this is important to note because we are talking to you here in January 2024. However, because of the date of the announcement of the project, of the program back in budget 2023, that can be considered as kind of a starting point if there is an activity that is that has a significant duration. So the program is 3 years long, so it's ending on March 31st, 2026. So if an organization, a business has, say, a 3-year project in mind with costs that have already been incurred, but the project is still well underway or just in its early stages, there is potential that earlier costs could be covered for the project activities towards the ultimate objective. So it's important to note that this doesn't mean that projects that are done now, that started between March 29th and today, but are complete, it doesn't mean that they would be covered. That's an important distinction that we'll get into because projects proposals need to demonstrate that the activity is either commencing or underway, but not substantially complete. In order to be eligible for consideration for funding. So I just want to make that clear. It's a bit it can create a bit of confusion, but so long as a project is underway and not substantially complete or completed at the time of application, there is an opportunity to be considered for funding. Now, with that being said, for this first intake, we're looking at projects that will normally have a 1 to 1.5 year duration. It doesn't mean that a project proposal couldn't come in asking for funding across all 3 years, but because of this initial intake, we're really just we're kind of focusing on the first year and a half of the program delivery, but I wouldn't say that wouldn't say that should be a deterrent to anybody if you do have a longer term project proposal. Just another point to note is that contribution amounts do not always align with what's requested. So the amount of the contribution should a project be successful, the amount of the contribution is based on what funding is available within the agency budget. So as an agency, FedDev Ontario does reserve the right to restructure and set the eligible contribution amount internally based on the project proposal. So if a project comes in seeking $250,000, it doesn't necessarily mean that the project would be eligible for that once the assessment is undertaken and various approvals achieved. So just want to make that clear. It is dependent on the broader budget. So there is potential for scoping of projects post submission of the application. So in terms of funding priorities, there are 6 priorities identified on the website and in terms of the overall program design. So what we are looking for in terms of projects proposals coming in are for projects to hit any one or a multitude of priorities identified here on the screen. So support to the Indigenous tourism industry is a key priority. Increasing tourism benefits for communities by driving visitation from urban areas to rural areas. That's another priority we are certainly focused on supporting. Economic, environmental, and cultural sustainability. So a project demonstrates that. That's a real important priority to focus on. Support for active outdoor experiences, extending the tourism season. So that could be broadening, offerings of a tourism delivery organization, a tourism focused business, for instance, extending the season, offering an expansion of programming. Those kinds of elements would fall into this priority. And then also any projects that can demonstrate that they are complementing support provided through provincial programs. So those are the 6 priorities that we are looking to have highlighted as part of any application. We want to be able to demonstrate that projects will align to at minimum one of these and more than likely a couple of these, but I don't want anyone to think that all 6 of these need to be components within any project submission. So it's not necessary that a project hit all 6 of these priority areas, but we do ask that project proponents and project applications make efforts to highlight how the project does align to any number of priorities here. That is important as part of our assessment. So if the project can demonstrate that it touches 2 of these priorities, 3 of these priorities, or even one of these in a very significant way, that's important for us to understand as part of the overall assessment. So, and just another point here at the bottom, in terms of priority to projects with activities taking place now and before March 31st. So we are looking to take an early look at projects that may have activities happening now, that may have spending in this current fiscal year. So again, it's not to say that the project has to be completely in this fiscal year. If it does overlap into next year, if the activity does go beyond it, March 31st, that isn't a deterrent. But if there are activities happening now, we do encourage you to consider submitting your application sooner than later for consideration. So the types of activities we can support, I'll go back to the objective of supporting the tourism industry. So we broke them down by activities for businesses and for not-for-profits. So you see here, eligible activities for businesses can include improving or creating new or innovative tourism offerings or products, investing in digitization or technology integration to enhance productivity, sustainability, efficiency, and or competitiveness. So that kind of goes into the growth model, taking the next step as an organization, as a business, finding efficiencies and working to improve your overall operations. Activities that develop and deliver new products, services, or experiences to increase tourism activity outside of the traditional high season and to extend services year-round. So those are important activities that can be highlighted as part of an application. And then any activities that enhance accessibility, create a welcoming environment for diverse clientele, also considered as eligible under this program. In terms of eligible activities for not-for-profit organizations, some examples include developing or implementing long-term tourism plans based on research and market analysis, activities that improve local assets, facilities, and or planning for key active outdoor tourism. So some examples include projects that provide more opportunities for physically active tourism offerings. So whether it's outdoor trails, pathways, sugar bush, anything that's outside and a tourism attraction. Activities that facilitate the growth of off-season tourism. So those that promote tourism products, services, and experiences outside of the traditional high season. Again, that's extending into the shoulder season, outside of the peak tourism season. Any activities that support the delivery of local community festivals and events that attract tourists to a destination, and developing or increasing capacity for tourism businesses to provide inclusive tourism experiences. So I hope those are helpful in terms of identifying what this program is after in terms of achieving and the activities that it is looking to support that would provide that boost or that growth element to the tourism sector. So when we think about the projects that we support, we're thinking about the results that they will achieve ultimately. So when you're applying, there are sections on the form to describe the objectives of the project, the expected outcomes of the project, and then a section later on that helps you identify certain metrics that would accompany your project that you're anticipating to achieve, that you see as either a spillover or an impact that your project will have. So the most common question that we get is, do all projects have to hit every indicator that is on our list here or in our application form? So the answer to that is no. Similar to the priority issue before, you don't have to hit every priority to be eligible. You also don't have to hit every metric in terms of expected results to be eligible for consideration. It's important for us to have a full and complete picture of what the activity and the project will achieve and what you're expecting to achieve. So really encourage you to think through all the metrics, not just here, but any other metrics that are pertinent to the project that you are proposing. And then using the form, there's an expansion element in the form to be able to add your own additional metrics. Use that to really articulate and underscore the importance and the impacts of your project. So in terms of the results, they're fairly standard that we've identified here, creating projects that create and maintain jobs, growing business revenue, producing new tourism products, increasing tourism volumes, whether they be domestic or international, and leveraging funding from other project partners. Those are some basic, essential kind of results that we're looking for. Again, don't have to hit them all, but really interested to know as much detail around these as possible as part of any project proposal. And we look at assessment criteria. So applications are reviewed and assessed based on a multitude of criteria. So you'll see here that expected results and alignment with the priorities we just discussed are very much part of the assessment assessment approach. So as part of the assessment, we consider the alignment of the project with the federal tourism growth strategy, the consistency with the TGP priorities that I mentioned earlier. So that'd be the Indigenous tourism, the extending to the shoulder season, moving urban to rural, those ones. And again, this is all on the website. So certainly have a multitude of reference points as you're completing the applications. So the ability of a project to demonstrate increased economic benefits of the activity or of the tourism offering, both in the region and or for the business or the organization. The quality of the project plan is also something we look at in terms of the sophistication, how thorough, whether the funding is already in place, if work is underway, the feasibility of the activity. That's all taken into consideration. For repayable contributions to for-profit businesses, there's also a consideration of that, the ability to repay of the organization. So important to note for any for-profit businesses that apply. Not so much applicable for today's discussion, but still an important part that we look for our for-profit projects. And then just an overall assessment of the risk of the project, the risk of success. Again, goes back to risk of repayability when we're talking about for-profits, but just a general assessment of the risk and the degree of risk that we're comfortable taking, and how that aligns, or how that can be offset by the benefits and potential that a project has. So we look at how and when to apply now. So our website has all the information you need to apply. As I said at the outset, the information that I've gone over here is certainly included on the website, and there's a significant amount more of information there to really help walk applicants through the application process, review the tools, understand the language, the information, and really see the linkages between the expected results, the priorities, the activities, and then how that all needs to be crystallized into the application. So you'll see on the website that the program information is laid out over several tabs, starting with the general information we covered at the start of this, and then goes into more specifics about how to apply as a business or how to apply as a not-for-profit organization. So depending on the type of organization you are, you would follow one of those two paths. So once you've read this site, been able to digest the essentials and the details of the program, then you're ready to start your application. So an important piece to consider here is the technical aspect of it as well. So it's important that applicants not rely on past applications they may have started working on for previous programs. So this is an important aspect. If you are familiar with FedDev Ontario, if you've received funding in the past, I would encourage you to just kind of start fresh in terms of your application form. So download the appropriate application form for your organization and start with a fresh new copy. That's important just because there are some issues with old, outdated PDFs not being able to submit. So either the questions have changed, the form and structure of the application has changed. So just I encourage you to just follow the steps on the website and then could begin with a fresh downloaded copy of the application. So the deadline to apply is February 29th, 2024, as I said, but again, we're happy to accept any applications before that date as well. So Indigenous applicants can use the appropriate form as well for them, or there's also a dedicated Indigenous services team here at FedDev Ontario that can help with further assistance. And there is actually no deadline for Indigenous applicants to apply. That's an important distinction that we've left open in terms of our programming, that we don't have we don't have deadlines for Indigenous applications. We're receiving them all year round. Now, if you're not able to make this initial intake period, or if the project that you're envisioning is not taking place until next year, we are expecting to have a second intake open this summer. So there will be an opportunity to apply in the future. So if you really aren't ready yet to apply, there is a second opportunity to be another bite at the apple later this summer. And just when you're filling in the application, in terms of the program that you're applying to for question 22, you can just put tourism growth program in there. We will find it if you don't do that, but it just helps with the importing of the application into our systems. So before we get on to the Q&A, and I'm sure there's a number of questions out there following this presentation. I just want to go over a few application form tips and troubleshoot and give some pointers, if I can, to possibly avoid any issues going forward. I'll remind you that this all is also on our website, so no need to take notes here. You can also, this is all included there as well to help navigate through the application process. So as I said, make sure you've downloaded the application form, the fresh form. There's steps on the website for how to download it and how to access it, and the appropriate program to use, which would be Adobe. So for businesses, please use the for-profit form, and for not-for-profits or communities, use the not-for-profit form. So there is a detailed application guide as well for both types of applicants, so for-profits and not-for-profits. So that will help with answering any questions, help give some context around all the various questions on the form. Identify the critical content we're looking for. It helps define some key terms. And there is also a list of mandatory attachments. I'll touch on that on a slide coming up as well, but there are mandatory attachments that we are looking for, that we will require to effectively and appropriately assess the projects that come in. So please take note of what attachments are necessary. Those can include financial statements, incorporation, documentation, that kind of thing. So the list will really help give a sense of what we need to be able to do a full and complete assessment. Otherwise, without this, there may have to be some back and forth and will cause delays in the assessment getting started. Just also try to stay within the character limits wherever it's stated. So it's normally 3,000 characters. So if you do run into issues with the character limit, please feel free to use an attachment if you do want to provide more information and more context. So for those smaller fields, you're more than welcome to provide an additional attachment. Just clearly state this is question over field 22 or question 22 or question 35, whatever, and then provide your full narrative in the attachment. For question 31, it deals with underrepresented groups. So this is a checkbox function, and it's voluntary. So it's there if you want to identify the organization as either being led by an underrepresented group or owned by, so whatever the case may be. But there is also, so that deals with the applicant. There is also a field in terms of underrepresented groups for the project. So it's about the impacts of the project. Is the project designed specifically to support or attract or impact a designated underrepresented group or a couple of groups? So there's a specific design intent within the project to target that. We'd encourage you not to select all of them if your project is by its nature, inclusive and will support all types of underrepresented groups. If that is the case, selecting all really isn't impactful in terms of the assessment. It's not going to score extra points because we'll just make the determination that, yeah, this is a broad-based and impactful project for all organizations. But if it is a targeted, specifically to women or to new Canadians, depending on the nature of the project, that will be assessed. I won't say more favorably, but it'll be assessed differently. It'll come into play in terms of the assessment, and it'll be a distinct component or attribute of the project. But it's important, just don't select all just because you think that that's the best course of action, because it's not necessary to select all to be able to be considered for the program. And then as I mentioned before, we do have our standard results and metrics, performance indicators and metrics in the field, but you can also add your own program specific indicators should you have any that you want to articulate. Say you're going to achieve X and here's the quantity of it. So there are instructions on how to build that out in the application form. So please, don't feel limited by just the standard ones that are in the form. And then once you submit, it's important, don't be deterred if when you hit submit, it takes a few seconds. I would say don't hit submit multiple times because that just ends up giving us multiple copies of your application. So when you hit submit at the bottom, once all attachments are there, you will either be the submission will go through and you'll receive a timestamped auto acknowledgement email, or the form will highlight any areas that are still outstanding, any questions that need to be answered. So there may be some fields that were missed. So it won't let you submit if there are some empty fields. But otherwise, once you hit submit once, just give it a second or two, and it should process, and you'll get your auto acknowledgement. So as I said, mandatory documents. Here is the list here. So just take note of these. Again, this is on the website, but as part of the application, we do look for financial statements, any financial projections that you have in terms of the impacts of the project, the articles of incorporation or amendments, or similar documents to give the validity and the incorporation date of your organization. Any background biographies of key management, staff. It helps with understanding the organizational makeup and helping with the assessment of the governance and the organization as a whole. The work plan or project schedule is important for us to know to be able to identify timelines, milestones, when activities are taking place. Any breakdown you have of the types and numbers of jobs that you expect to have to be created or maintained as a result of the project. And then any copies of letters of support or intent that you can include from partners, any other underlying permits, technical requirements, that kind of thing. So that gets us to the end of my portion of the presentation. As I said, all that information that I just went over is on the website, along with a whole lot more. Like I said, detailed applicant companion pieces for how to apply. So application guides for for-profits or not-for-profits. I am certainly available for any follow-up questions. Allison as well. We are more than happy to have any follow-up discussions. You can contact the organization or the agency directly through our website. So info@feddevontario.gc.ca, or our phone number, 1-866-593-5505. Questions can come in through that channel and they will make their way to us, or you can reach out to us directly as well. So always happy to have a conversation about, project ideas, any specific details around the program that you may have. So this information is also on our website. Our contact us page has this info. So again, no need to have to jot this down, but yeah, that's the communication channels you can use here for us. So with that, maybe I will turn back to Christopher and we can start answering any questions that may have come up.
Well, thank you so much, Jordan. That was incredibly in-depth, and we know that your website certainly has a greater depth as well. It's certainly a very complex process with a lot of key components. So we hopefully have given people at least a taste of things that they'll need in preparing and developing good projects and good applications. Allison has been working diligently to answer questions that came into the chat. We might come back to several of those just to go over some of the sort of shared themes that we're seeing. And I wanted to share with everybody, we have recorded this session, and everyone who registered for the session, whether they're here live or not, will receive that recording by email with any links that we have to both this program, the program information, the contact information, as well as perhaps a link to FedNor, as I know that there are several interested parties here on the call who may not be eligible based on geography, so may find a better use to apply in that FedNor program. But hopefully this introduction to the program and its priorities helps you structure your application for FedNor as well. So I think we're going to start with our first theme, which is about kind of organizations, eligibility, and their collaborators and things like that. So we've had a couple of questions. We're going to start with one. Would a municipality, for example, be eligible?
Yes, a municipality would be eligible.
And is that eligible both as a lead applicant and as a collaborator?
Yes, the municipality can apply directly if they are the main project proponent, but we are interested to know if a municipality is a partner on any other application. So they should be identified by any direct applicant to us. They should be identified as either a collaborator, another funding source, whatever capacity the municipality will be acting in on any other project. But there is only ever one direct project proponent for any application. So we do want the main project entity to submit the application and then identify their partnerships as part of the application. Allison, did I misrepresent anything there?
No, that was perfect.
Excellent. So another one, a question about eligibility. So a non-for-profit community art gallery with both tourist and local audiences, they want to make sure they'd be eligible for support for a tourism-related product or experience project.
It is a little difficult to speak directly to the potential for being approved or to receive the funding. What we can advise at this point is you are an eligible applicant if the project is tourism based and has an impact on your local economy or your regional economy, definitely eligible to apply. Then projects will be assessed based on those impacts, the strength of the impacts.
Excellent. Just checking through some other questions here. So if an organization, for example, has not traditionally had a sort of tourism mandate, and they're hoping to expand their offerings to cover and grow off-season tourism and develop local community festivals and events that attract tourists to their destination, do you think that would be this is a good program for them to apply into?
Yes, the tourism growth program does look at instances where new tourism activities are being created, or you're an established organization or business and you're growing your revenue stream. You see you have an opportunity for growth in this area, then yes, you're eligible to apply.
Again, it's back to what Allison said before. It's difficult we can't give any, real insights to the nature of a project in a forum like this. Certainly, it would require, a more deep dive, certainly into the project details. But yeah, the project itself, just encourage those applying to really underscore, here's the benefits, here's the impacts, here's the expectation of what a project will result in, will deliver the impacts. And then, then it becomes part of an assessment, impact versus investment, is this, does this make sense? So a multitude of variables are considered as part of the application. But certainly if you fall into the categories that we outline in terms of the eligible activities, if you're looking to do an expansion or improve the tourism experience, that kind of thing, that does fall within the tourism growth program design.
Is it possible to apply as a group of eligible entities? For example, a group of museums across a regional area or another group of entities to make an application to the program?
So like I mentioned for the first question, there would need to be one lead main project proponent, and the project itself would really have to kind of demonstrate it's a collective with broad impacts, but it's, clearly have to demonstrate the activities and the nature of the project. If it's more of like, this organization is going to do this organization is going to do that, and this organization is going to do that, though that scenario would be more akin to 3 separate applications with distinct activities, unless there is a real concerted effort. It's a component of a broader strategy, but again, can't say distinctly one way or the other whether it makes sense, but it would depend on the type of project being proposed. Allison, you might have encountered this type of project in the past. You want to add some clarification there?
I'm sorry, I was answering questions. Sorry, what was your question, Jordan?
No, is the question was, can a group of museums apply as a collective?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. We do, like the regional tourism organizations. They have a group project. One of them took the lead, submitted the application, and then indicated on the application which other of the RTOs were collaborating and how much they were contributing financially.
But in that case, the activity itself is a broad-based, singular activity, as opposed to multiple, like this organization will do this organization will do that, this organization will do that. If it's more disparate like that, probably more akin to 3 distinct applications as opposed to one single one. So again, depends on the nature of the project. I hope
Excellent.
that adds clarity, but only so much advice we can give without knowing the specifics of the proposal.
Absolutely.
So there have been, sorry, I'm taking over for you. There have been a couple of questions about financial projections and measuring tourism impact. The province has a tool called it's TREIM. I can't remember what it all stands for, but it is it measures the economic impact of tourism. So you can like plug in your project information and it will generate for you the anticipated or expected economic benefits. So it is very, very handy. We use it ourselves oftentimes to kind of measure at the end of a project. We'll use it to like kind of coordinate with what the recipient has told us their benefit, the impact was, and we plug the information in and kind of use that as a litmus just to gauge where we are. But it's a good tool if you're not quite sure how to measure or forecast what the impacts might be. You can certainly use that.
Absolutely. So we'll make sure we.
Yeah, if you just like Google like capital letters TREIM, and it'll pop up for you. Maybe I can put it in the chat.
We'll make sure we include a link to that tourism region economic impact model in the follow-up email with the recording, everybody. So
See,
we'll make sure we provide that to everybody. Well, we're on that same thought about kind of financial impacts and financial projections. Are there any guidelines for how to project financial benefits for a project that is capacity building? For our museums, for example, that might be like digitizing their organization around websites, content, membership management systems, or for digitizing experiences, things like exhibits or collections. Is there any sort of guidance for how to financially project the benefits for a capacity building project?
That's very much in the weeds of things. If you kind of look at historically how what your visitor numbers are over however many years, or if you notice spikes when you add new exhibits, you kind of look at that history and say, well, in the past, when we added new exhibits, we saw a 10% increase in our visitors. And then, well, we're going to do this couple of new things, so we could expect those increases as well during the visitor time. So you kind of have to look at the history of your organization and when you've noticed the number of visitors, and then you can say, well, when we have X more number of visitors, then our revenues go up X percent as well.
We have one more question on organizations and eligibility, and then we might move on to looking at eligible projects. And that question is, if my organization is in a deficit, are we eligible for funding?
So I'm just answering a quick question in the chat. Jordan, can you
Sure.
take that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So the financial position of an organization is something we take into consideration. I would say yes, that an organization like that is eligible to apply, certainly, but there will be a review of the financial position of the organization undertaken as part of the assessment. As I mentioned, there's, a risk calculation in terms of, the supportability of an organization, the sustainability, that's all taken into account. So in terms of eligible to apply, yes, that wouldn't stop an organization from applying. In terms of success or assessment, impossible to say without actually knowing and seeing the financial details. But there wouldn't be anything stopping an organization like that from applying.
Again, on organizations and collaborators, does the program have any guidelines or suggestions for approaching Indigenous communities for providing a shared kind of tourism experience or shared project, or for how those agreements should be structured based on sort of priorities for supporting Indigenous organizations?
No, we're not prescribing in terms of how to go about establishing those relationships. If they're pre-existing relationships, that's great. But no, we're not dictating how those relationships would take place outside of FedDev Ontario's activities. We would consider those partnerships as part of any application, certainly. But no, we don't have any underlying guidance in terms of how to structure those or what they would look like. It would be between the applicant and the partner organization.
And so we've had a couple of questions about applying for more than one project, both as a lead applicant and as a collaborator. So can we speak to the eligibility of people to apply for more than one project, both within this call and subsequent calls for the program, and whether or not people are able to be collaborators on more than one project as well?
So we would encourage, if there's a distinct project with a start and end date that is in mind for this intake, yes, apply. If there is a separate and distinct project in the future that's being considered, I would say that there may be an opportunity to apply again, but if there is a way of building that into the broader project proposal that the organization would submit now, I'd say try as best as possible to make it as part of a broader tourism plan with specific activities, milestones across that longer time span, so that it just exists as one single application. Because there would not, it'd be difficult to consider an organization getting 2 bites at the TGP apple in terms of what level of support. Given the budget that we have, yeah, it would be still largely within that $250,000 ceiling that is normally contributed. So I'd say if there are multiple activities, an entity should do their best to try to roll that into a single application with the phase 1, phase 2, that kind of thing. I forget the other. Oh, in terms of collaborators, no, we've got an organization could be a partner on any other applications that come in, so long as they're not the direct recipient or direct applicant. The other partners are considered as part of additional leverage funding, but there isn't anything stopping an organization from being a partner on another application or another project and also being a direct recipient for TGP. Allison, anything you want to add in terms of multiple applications versus a single?
No, that pretty much hit it all, Jordan. You're right. If you have a couple of projects, instead of applying for like separate applications, you might want to roll it up into that plan, or make it a larger of a strategic tourism plan that you have for your organization or your region. To something that it looks like, I don't know how to say this. It comes as a strategic implementation of an overarching idea, and you've got these activities that you're going to use to implement it.
Yeah, and the important,
Yeah.
other important part is to remember that the $250,000 ceiling is in place. So, you know, if there are two phases or two different projects, you're still only going to be able to get to that 250. So that may be exhausted by that first phase of the project anyways, depending on the complexity or the need. So you know, recommend that it all be considered as part of a single application as much as possible.
And you just spoke about the $250,000 ceiling in terms of contributions received. So for an NFP that receives a non-repayable contribution, there's different levels of available funding. So that might be 50% of eligible activity costs up to 100%. Am I recalling that correctly?
Yes, depending on the
I'm
type
sorry,
of.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Allison.
Oh, I was
I've
just
talked
gonna
enough.
say that, that's okay. Not-for-profits are eligible up to 100% of project costs. However, if you have partners or your own organization that can contribute to the costs of the project, those may receive priority. As it is showing that they've got some skin in the game, you have other partners that are invested in this project. It just bolsters the application rather than, but if you need 100%, then certainly ask for 100% if you can demonstrate, I guess that these will have very strong impacts to this project. They make that case why 100% of the funding is required.
So for that sort of 50 to 100% of eligible costs, for a lot of our organizations thinking about whether their contributions are cash contributions or in-kind contributions, how is the program structured around cash contributions versus in-kind contributions?
Yeah, you just note on the application, like if the organization is, they're gonna, provide a staff member to oversee the project, then the value of that labor would be an in-kind contribution toward the project. Or if you're receiving maybe some funding from the province, then you say, oh, Trillium is kicking in $25,000 toward the project, like whatever it is. And then, then there's just more people involved. We're looking at leveraging the contribution. Yeah, sure, FedDev's come in for $250,000, but the province and the recipient are gonna kick in a total of 100,000. So the total project is 350 now, and then the FedDev share is 250.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Maybe
important.
okay. Go
I
ahead,
was just
Jordan.
going to say an important piece to note is that I don't want to say it in a negative connotation, but FedDev Ontario is invested in getting the money out to as many proponents, as many projects as possible. So that's where projects that can demonstrate there is complementary funding, partners, investments that can take the percentage of FedDev Ontario funding down or minimize the need for. We want to fund to the minimum need possible wherever we can, so that we're able to make sure that funding is available to as many different types of projects and organizations as possible. So that's just one consideration internally that we look at. As Allison said, if a project comes in with overwhelming impacts and a cost benefit analysis that is just through the roof, that may warrant going up above 50 and up to 100. It depends on the situation. So wherever we can leverage other funding, that is something that we look favorably on in terms of being a partner in a project as opposed to the sole funder.
We have maybe a very museum specific question, so I'm glad that you're joining the Museum Association to talk about it. So this is from a museum in a high tourism community. They're looking to revamp their permanent exhibitions to attract more tourists to the site and include more diverse stories. Would the costs for planning, designing, and installation of new permanent exhibits as a tourism draw be eligible under the program?
Those would certainly be considered for support. The cost must be incremental to the project. So we're not looking at supporting day-to-day operational costs, but costs that are specific to that project, which can include planning and designing new exhibits. Would certainly those would be eligible for consideration.
Excellent. Another question. So what does the TGP consider a rural area?
Population centers of less than 100,000 people. Because that's
Yeah,
our
it's the-
general rule of thumb.
Yeah, it draws from the Statistics Canada
Yeah.
database, and so that's the delineation that we use.
Are projects or products expected to be delivered in both official languages?
That does depend if you're an official language minority community and what the activities are. So if you are in an official language minority community, and say their last example, you're making displays in your museum, then any of those designs or exhibitions that received federal support to create and put on display, we would require the signage to be in both official languages. And then any, like if there's like a brochure or an app where you can walk through and maybe do a self-guided interpretation, those would need to be in both languages as well. But if you are in a non-official language minority community, at that point, we would just perhaps look at the signage that we would request in both languages. But
And
it
we will
is a
help
great
you
question.
identify. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a great question. We'll help you identify if you are in one of those communities or not, if you're not sure.
And so
That will
looking
be a
at
distinct part of the project. Yep, go ahead.
absolutely, translation is always a factor in many of the things that we do. So is there a preference for eligible projects that are one-off activities like a festival, or versus kind of an ongoing something like an exhibition renewal or a marketing plan? Is there a preference or which aligns most clearly with the priorities of the tourism growth program, perhaps?
Yeah, the preference is actually for incrementality and growth. So if the festival is, you're expanding it from 2 days to 3 or 1 day to 2, and you're doing additional things to attract more people to the area, that would definitely be that's what we're looking for, is those growth plays. So if it came down to a festival that's going from 1 day to 2, and an exhibition where it's, that's kind of just what you do, but you're not doing anything extra, the festival would weigh out. But if it's just, hey, we're putting on this festival again, but the exhibition is you're adding and adding digital applications or augmented reality and doing all sorts of extra to bring more people in and to get attention and draw people to your area, then that project now it would be preferred. So it just completely depends on the project, and the important thing to remember is incrementality and growth.
Thinking a little bit more
Yeah,
about. Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
I was
Sorry.
just gonna add alignment with the priorities, certainly, how you can demonstrate alignment, how you can quantify your projections in terms of that growth that Allison just outlined. That it really is, the foundation of what the program is about, and supporting the priorities, demonstrating that this is augmenting the existing reality of the tourism sector, and the organization is taking steps to grow. It's promoting, it's providing an opportunity for increased tourism, increases to the visitor economy, and then supporting that with any underlying metrics and projections based on historical, as Allison had mentioned earlier, whether financial projections, visitor projections, those kinds of things. So it is that incrementality, that growth, that next step, not just projects that continue to do the day-to-day without any step forward, let's say.
So as this tourism growth program is coming from federal funding, several of our other museum programs, things like Canada Cultural Spaces Fund or the Museums Assistance Program, are also federal funding. Is there a cap on federal funding within a certain project, or how are those assessed with versus funding from other sources like the province, municipalities, or an owned organization?
We look at all public money as stacking, and the stacking cannot exceed 100% of the project costs.
For not-for-profit projects, there are different stacking rules for
Yeah.
for-profit projects, but for not-for-profit
That's right.
projects, yeah, stacking of total government funding cannot exceed 100%. So that's the limit on not-for-profits.
So on eligible project activities, we have a question about kind of capital upgrades. We saw that there was building permits possibly required as one of the attaching documents. So any guidelines on how the project will support kind of capital upgrades, building construction, any of those expansions of spaces?
I've actually just flipped here to the presentation just on some cost categories here to be a helpful reference. So if you look at the top here, capital costs. So there are costs that are eligible within here. So machinery and equipment. So the purchase or installation of equipment, machinery, software, as part of the project expansion. And then project facilities and infrastructure. So any renovation, site or leasehold improvements, directly related to the purchase or installation of specialized equipment or assets related to the project. So those costs can be considered as part of the application. There are specific capital costs that are outside, like acquisition of vehicles is not in scope and it's not supported. Acquisition of land is not supported. So those are some big ticket items, and certainly with the $250,000 threshold as well, those would be outside of the scope. Well, vehicles maybe not, but they are getting more expensive too. So, but either way, yeah, vehicles are out, land is out, but that there gives a window of what capital costs are covered, and this is also on our website.
Yeah, and also purchase of buildings. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, Jordan. A purchase of a building is not eligible. However, if your existing building requires renovations or improvements in order to like install a new exhibit, and that is something that would be considered for support.
Yes, thanks, Allison. I didn't reference that, but good catch.
So yes, looking at sort of tourism metrics, maybe back to some of these impact measures of, are there certain, we have, I think from the application, there's kind of two layers of local versus non-local, or what kind of tourism impacts are people hoping to provide within their application?
It's really an understanding of the anticipated increase, the results that the project will provide. You know, so if it's expanding, as Allison mentioned, you know, a festival from a 2-day to a 4-day, or across 2 weekends, you know, underpinning that with the anticipated metrics and basically the bang for the buck. Like you're doing it because it's going to result in X number of additional visitors coming in. Like this is kind of a cost benefit analysis for any applicant as well. Like if I'm going to extend this for an extra day, but it's going to be on a Monday, we're probably only going to bring in another 100 people. Maybe not necessarily the project that the proponent's going to want to go forward with. And this is an important part I didn't emphasize in the project, but really the demand and the desire for these projects should be clear and evident to the applicant, and should be fairly easy to articulate to us, because it should be something that the applicant has identified as critical to their growth, critical to their operations, taking that next step. There's an obvious value proposition that the organization has identified, and that is also reinforced if the organization has funding committed to this activity as well. So that goes to the previous point about, you know, level of support and how much FedDev supports versus other organizations versus the applicant themselves. So if the applicant is demonstrating they've got funding invested in this, they must see this as a good idea, and there must be a rationale for that. So communicating that rationale to us is important, whether it's through metrics, whether it's through anticipated increase in revenues, whatever the value and metrics may be that are making this a good project in the eyes of the applicant. We would like to know those as well. So making sure you communicate those effectively to us is the best way to really get across the value proposition of your project and the impact you see it having on your organization. And we want to just understand that as well. So whether that's, increased number of visitors, increased revenue, broader spillover impacts on the communities, on the region. So that's something we've seen with some applications for festivals, or expanding festivals to, you know, shoulder season, doing an offshoot of a summer festival into the fall. It's going to have these broader impacts on these communities, that kind of thing. any way you can quantify that with metrics that that have come from research and studies, please make sure that's passed along to us, because we want to understand, you know, where any potential FedDev Ontario funding will be going to and what it is projected to result in.
Yeah, so for example, you say you might have an event that runs on Saturdays every year, but the local Chamber of Commerce has told you they've noticed an uptick in hotel stays and restaurant spending every Friday before your event. So it's like, hey, you know what? People are coming in town on Fridays. Let's run events on Fridays, and then maybe more people will start coming on Friday. They're coming in early, so let's do something. Let's maybe get more people at the Friday evening or whatever it is, and more people will come in on that Friday. And in addition to the ones that are already making that trip, it makes it more interesting for more people to come in, and you're growing your event, and you're helping to contribute to those hotel stays and restaurant visits or shopping or whatever it is.
Along that same line, we've got a couple examples about expanding an existing sort of offering. Is there any preference or priority or favorable assessment in the program for creating something new versus expanding or improving an existing idea or project?
I think we would just really need you to make the case. Like it can't be if we build it, they will come. Like you need to really show the case as to why you're going to be doing this. Like why, like Jordan said, why is this why do you feel this is a good idea? You know, what can you demonstrate that you know this will be successful in that first year? And then so that then when you're successful for a couple of years, those first years are always building years, and it's not until you really have gained some traction that you start seeing the revenue growth. So I would just just recommend making a very strong case for that brand new event.
Yeah, short answer is no, there's no initial preference for net new versus expansion. It really comes down to what value does this project to have? Where is the demand coming from? So articulating that, underpinning it with metrics, that's really the essence of it all. So if it is a net new, but it's responding to a request, to an identified and clear demand, you know, that's fine. So there's no initial preference. No, I would say it all depends on the project itself and the merits and projections and anticipated impacts that the project has.
Thinking again about assessment, we had a note about projects with costs incurred before March 31st, 2024, I think, perhaps getting assessed first or priority for assessment. Can we speak to that a little bit about, I know that the program was announced a little bit earlier, so how people conceptualize what projects may have been underway or supported in around the fiscal years, especially.
Sure, that comment was really just about if you have a project currently underway that falls in line with the project, the program parameters, aligns with the priorities, is in the tourism sector, is not substantially complete. Maybe you're just in the early planning stages. Maybe you've started to contract out, you know, plans, and work is underway, and the ultimate results are going to materialize in the summer of 2024, the spring of 2025. But activities are happening now, or were planning started back in August of 2023. Those activities could be considered as part of a project. So in that instance, if you're looking to have previous costs considered as part of a project proposal, certainly get your application in sooner than later. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be considered after March 31st. You know, for any project, but there is funding to spend this fiscal year before March 31st. So we are considering and reviewing projects actively now that have come in that have identified potential spending this fiscal year. So that's just the purpose for that note, that it doesn't have to be all on a go forward basis. There can be projects either already underway or well, at least that are already underway, but certainly not substantially complete, but that have already incurred costs, so long as they're not before March 29th, 2023.
Looking forward to kind of assessment. And one of the questions about the number of jobs created versus maintained by the project. Could you explain a little bit more about how those jobs would be calculated, or what jobs go into which category?
I'm just
Sure.
pulling up. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan. I'm gonna pull up the guide.
Yeah, just broadly, it really is about articulating what kind of job creation impact a project's going to have. So as a result of doing this project, if there are some temporary positions anticipated to be created, for the next year or 2 years to support delivery of the project, that would be considered as a temporary new what we call full-time equivalent, which is basically a full-time job. So that's what we measure. So if you're articulating, there's going to be 2 jobs created on a full-time basis for a year, that would be 2 FTEs, like we call it. If the project itself is going to ultimately result in 2 new permanent jobs created, because now there's an entire second or an entire new wing of a museum or of an offering that requires people to be working there, it's a net new job created. If it's a full-time job, that would be 1 new full-time position if there's more. If it's 2 part-time positions, we would add them up to be 1 full-time equivalent. So we would consider it as 1 full-time, but you can identify as part of your application this is going to result in 3 part-time positions coming in. Okay, we'll calculate that to say, okay, that seems like it's going to be ultimately 1.5 full-time, like equivalent to 1.5 full-time jobs. That's the simplified answer. Allison, if there's anything else you want to add just for the guide there, but
No, that's basically what is in the guide.
Yeah.
So if like say you're thinking, well, we're gonna hire people for our festival that runs for 1 week. So it's a bit laborious, the calculation, because you have to look at how many and you're gonna hire, how many hours are those people working over that 1 week, and then prorate it over the course of the year. So when you hire like 20 people for that 1 week, it will end up being a much smaller number of full-time equivalent positions. That's okay. It is absolutely okay for it to be a smaller number, because we will recognize that, oh, they're only going to be working for a week, maybe 2, when you put in like some training for them, and maybe they're going to help set up and take down stuff and whatever. So it'll only be a couple of weeks of actual work for 20 people, but over the course of the year, it might be 2 full-time equivalent positions.
yeah. And so to Allison's point, it doesn't help the application to say you're creating 20 jobs if they're only a 2-week interval, because we will get down into those details as part of our analysis and assessment, and we will whittle it down to the full-time equivalent. So again, to a simplified example, if a festival hired 52 people for a week's worth of work, that would equate out to 1 FTE over the course of a year, right? So that's how we would characterize it. So like certainly include that detail. Like we're going to hire 52 people, but only for a week's worth of work. We'll do the calculations on our end, and ultimately as part of any assessment, we would say this project would create 1 FTE, one job for all intents and purposes.
And then those FTEs would be inclusive of any positions that are supported fully by funding. So for example, a project coordinator role is part of the application that creates 1 position that is included in that calculation of created and maintained, or I guess created in this case.
Yeah, if it's affiliated with the project itself, then yes. We want to consider that. We encourage you to document all roles and functions and positions that are working in support of the project.
Well, we have reached the end of any questions submitted to us, and we're nearing the end of our time here. I would like to encourage everybody, of course, to download the application guide and any of the other information there. We'll provide that with our recording, direct links to those so you can find them, as well as the contact information for our friends at FedDev, who will take and answer any questions that you do have about your application process. I'm going to step across and share my screen just so we finish up here with our pieces. So thank you so much to our colleagues Jordan and Allison for joining us today, who took us through the general portions of that application to the Tourism Growth Program. I want to thank them so much for taking the time out of what an incredibly busy schedule. They've been doing several of these across the province and online, so that folks could make sure that they're ready for that application deadline coming up at the end of February. So when you leave the webinar, you'll be sent a survey in SurveyMonkey for you to fill out that will help us inform both our success of this webinar today, as well as any of our future PD opportunities. And your support of our organization and support of the things that we do like this webinar make us much stronger as a sector. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you're able, there are some things you can do to help support the OMA. If you are already a member, please can renew membership when you receive an email reminder. If you're not a member yet, please consider becoming one, either as an institution or as an individual. You can find more about that on our website, as well as our member benefits categories. We also have on our website a donation button that helps support our ongoing activities, either through our website directly or through Canada Helps. So thank you so much to Allison and Jordan. We wish everybody the best of luck in completing their applications, and have a great rest of your day. Hope everybody's staying warm. I know it's chilly here in Toronto. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. We really appreciate being here today. And thank you for organizing this. Take care, folks.